The head of Russia's Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, has supported Putin's war in Ukraine from the start. He described those opposing the invasion as the forces of evil. Now, this has angered many Ukrainians who say Kirill has given his blessings to Putin to kill his fellow Slavs and people of the same faith.
So far, Russian attacks have damaged as many as 92 churches and places of worship in Ukraine. There have also been increasing reports of attacks against the clergy there. Russia's war, it seems, also has a religious dimension. Much of this religious conflict has been fueled by the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow and, in particular, by its head, Patriarch Kirill. Long before the start of the invasion, Kirill positioned himself and his church as strong ideological allies of the Kremlin. Kirill has repeatedly cast Russia as a defender of divine law against the forces of evil, which he identifies as emanating from Western democracies. Kirill's proximity to the Kremlin goes hand in hand with Putin's commitment to the church. In 2012, the Patriarch described Putin's political project as a miracle of God. Over the next few years, he became a staunch supporter of the Kremlin's agenda. In a sermon in March this year, Kirill rebuked members of his own church who opposed the war. "We will never make peace," he said, "with those who violate the law of God." For Kirill, the invasion of Ukraine is a religious crusade aimed at defending divine law. Those who oppose it are therefore enemies of God. The Kremlin and its forces have effectively been granted a religious stamp of approval for their actions. Many of the victims of the violence unleashed by the Kremlin and blessed by the church in Moscow are Kirill's own faithful. Ukraine has almost 12,000 Russian Orthodox parishes, many of which now stand in the way of Russian munitions.
And for more on this, we can speak to our religious affairs expert, Martin Gack. Good morning, Martin. Now, we saw in that report how close the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Kirill is. How important is the Patriarch for the Russian president?
I think that the Patriarch is actually very important for the Russian president for one thing, because he actually has offered not only political but strong ideological proximity and backing to many of the positions, very conservative ones, that have actually emanated from the Kremlin. On the other hand, you have to keep in mind that the Orthodox Church in Russia has about something in the order of 78 to 80% of presence among the Russian people. So that means that all the way from Moscow to the small parishes, the Patriarch of Moscow has actually enormous penetration in terms of politics, in terms of social work, and obviously in terms of ideology. So it's an excellent promoter of the Kremlin's position.
OK, and what's his motivation? Why is Kirill so supportive of Putin?
I think what Kirill sees in Putin, what the Russian Orthodox Church has seen in Putin for a very long time, is a kin spirit, is somebody who holds some of the same ideas and wants a return to a form of, very classical conservatism, which actually opposes a lot of the progressive causes that emanate from the West. So Kirill sort of mentions repeatedly gay pride parades. Which in some sense is laughable, but on the other hand, I mean, this is actually a good example of the imaginary of a very conservative part of the country. I think it's worth saying that, Putin is looking also for somebody that can, or has been looking for somebody that can do that for him. And so in a sense, it's a perfect match.
Now, Kirill is on the EU's sanctions list. Why sanction a priest? I mean, what effect would this have if he were to be sanctioned?
Well, it seems to be the case that Kirill is also an extraordinarily rich man who has actually profited enormously from the proximity to the Kremlin. These are mostly unconfirmed reports and things that sort of circulate in open source intelligence and so on. But this means also that Kirill has actually some of the profile of the inner circle of of Putin and some of the other people that had been hit by EU and US sanctions.
DW Religious Affairs correspondent Martin Gack will have to leave it there. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.